Have you ever stopped and wondered what skills are really essential for a tech career right now? If you cut through all the hype and the buzzwords. Well, we're going to decode the DNA of a modern IT professional by looking at a source you might not expect. All right, let's get into it.
So, here's the big question. What's the actual benchmark? What does a huge organization, like the government, see as the absolute must-have knowledge for a tech role today? Turns out, the answer is kind of laid out for us in plain sight.
And this is it. Our source material is an official recruitment exam. Now, I know what you're thinking. An exam paper sounds incredibly dry, right? But I want you to think of it less like a test and more like a treasure map. It literally points directly to the core skills that employers are desperate to find.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start by decoding the role itself. Then we're going to build from the ground up, the core hardware, then the software used to manage all our information, and then we'll get into the global network that ties it all together. And at the end, we'll zoom out and look at the big picture. Okay, let's get started. By digging into these exam questions, we're not just studying for some test. No, we're basically reverse engineering the blueprint for what makes a successful IT pro. This exam is a direct peek into what employers see as the absolute foundation of the tech world today.
First things first, the absolute fundamentals. I mean, you can't build a house on a shaky foundation, and you definitely can't be an IT pro without mastering the bedrock of how a computer actually works. And it really all starts with the brain of the operation. Question 38 on this exam asks what CPU stands for. It seems simple, but it sets a critical baseline. You have to understand that the central processing unit is the heart of everything. It's totally non-negotiable, because every performance issue, every piece of software, it all comes back to how the CPU is handling the load.
And if the CPU is the brain, then this is the soul of the machine. One question asks, what system checks all the devices and loads drivers when you boot up? And the answer, of course, is the operating system. You gotta think of it as the master conductor. Without the OS, the CPU, the memory, all your devices, they're just a silent orchestra waiting for instructions.
The next piece of the foundation is just understanding scale. IT is all about managing information, and you need to speak the language of how we measure that information. So question 14 asks what term represents about 1 billion characters, and the answer is a gigabyte.
And just look at that number, 1 billion. This isn't just some abstract term you memorize for a test. It's a massive, massive amount of data. And getting a feel for that scale, from kilobytes to gigabytes to terabytes, is absolutely fundamental to managing the tidal wave of information that flows through every single system you'll ever work on. Okay, so once you get the core components down, the next layer is knowing how to actually use them. This is where we get into the software, the tools that let us create, organize, and manage information so it's actually useful. I absolutely love this example from the test. Question 17 asks about something called WordStar. Now, that was one of the very first word processors for the mass market. This isn't just a random trivia question. It shows that a real pro is expected to understand the evolution of their tools, from these old-school standalone programs to the powerful, collaborative, cloud-based stuff we all use today. And of course, it's not just about documents on your own computer anymore. In today's world, a basic grasp of how the web works is essential. Question 10 asks for the HTML tag for the biggest heading. It's H1. And what that tells us is that even for a general IT job, a basic literacy in the language of the web is pretty much a standard requirement now.
But what about when you have to organize huge amounts of structured information? Well, that's where databases come in. Questions 8 and 9 are all about MySQL, a system for managing data in neat tables. This shows that an IT pro needs to be super versatile. You have to be able to handle everything from a simple document to a really complex relational database.
So, we've got the hardware and we've got the software to manage information. The next huge piece of this puzzle is the network. How all this data zips around the world, and maybe even more importantly, how we keep it all safe. Honestly, this question right here defines so much of modern IT. It's not enough to know how to create and store data anymore. You have to understand the roads it travels on, the infrastructure, and you have to know the principles of how to protect it while it's on that journey. And check this out, the exam gives us a perfect little breakdown. Question 71 is a matching game that lays out the core networking hardware. You've got a hub to just connect devices, a switch does it smarter, more efficiently, a router divides up networks, and a bridge forwards data between different parts. This one question is like a mini masterclass in network fundamentals.
And building right on that, question 73 throws in a more specialized device, the router, which is exactly what it sounds like, a hybrid of a bridge and a router. Now, you might not hear this exact word used all the time today, but the concept behind it is critical, knowing how individual components can be combined to solve more complicated networking problems. Of course, the second you build a network, you've got to worry about threats. The exam covers this a lot, starting with farming. This is that classic, really devious attack where criminals build a fake website that looks real, all to steal your information. It's a sneaky tactic every IT pro has to know how to spot and defend against.
Next on the list is spamming. Question 28 defines it as flooding the internet with the same message over and over. And yeah, it seems like it's just an annoyance, but it's also one of the main ways that malware and phishing attacks get delivered, which makes it a really serious security issue.
And finally, we have the brute force attack. Question 26 is about DDoS, or distributed denial of service. This is where attackers just overwhelm a server with so much traffic that it completely shuts down. Understanding this kind of threat is absolutely crucial for anyone who's in charge of keeping online services up and running.
So, after taking apart this whole exam, what did we actually learn? Well, it all seems to come together into this really clear framework that defines the modern IT professional. I like to think of it as the 4 essential pillars.
And here they are. First, the core components. That's just understanding the physics of how computers work. Second, information management. The skill of using software to build and organize data. Third, network and security. Knowing how to connect everything and, just as important, how to protect it. And finally, the one skill that ties it all together, problem solving. Because at the end of the day, that's what an IT pro does. They take all this knowledge and apply it to make technology actually work for people.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As AI gets better and better at automating a lot of the routine tasks in these areas, which of these human skills are going to matter the most? Is it going to be the deep technical knowledge, the creative problem solving, or the cybersecurity instincts that will really define the IT professional of tomorrow? It's definitely something to think about.